Okay, you saw it. Everyone saw it. Shedeur Sanders jogged onto that NFL preseason field, helmet low, shoulders squared, ready to prove he belonged. And what did he get? A disaster disguised as an opportunity. Now, you can spin it a dozen different ways, and trust me, the Browns did, but what went down that night wasn't just unfortunate. It wasn't a case of rookie jitters or playbook confusion. No, this had the distinct smell of sabotage. And when fans started to dig deeper, the truth that bubbled up left people stunned, furious, and honestly, a little heartbroken. Because Shedeur didn't just stumble out there. He was set up to...
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Because you need the full picture to really grasp how absurd this is. Shedeur Sanders isn't some kid who lucked into the NFL because of his last name. Yes, he's Deion's son. And yes, that name carries legacy. But Shedeur built his resume with blood, sweat, and film study. At Colorado, he was the guy. Cool under pressure, surgical with his passes, and known for spending extra hours after practice, grinding tape, tweaking footwork, drilling mechanics. He did everything right. So when the Browns signed him, fans were excited. And rightfully so. Finally, a young quarterback with potential and pedigree. Someone who wasn't just riding hype, but actually putting in the work. And by all accounts, he showed up to Cleveland ready to compete. But then something weird happened. Practice reports started trickling out. Shedeur was getting barely any first-team reps. He was running drills with third and fourth-string receivers. No chemistry. No rhythm. No real chance to build a connection with the actual playmakers on the roster. Okay, you think maybe it's just easing him in. Nope. Game day hits, and Stefanski sends Shedeur out behind a skeleton crew. The O-line looked like they were still learning names. The wideouts were lost. The pocket collapsed more times than a folding chair at a barbecue. And when Shedeur tried to make something out of nothing, the critics pounced. The stat line? Mediocre at best. The media headlines? Disappointing debut. The takes? Relentless. And yet, Shedeur said nothing. No complaints. No blame. He stood in front of those cameras and took it on the chin. I've got to be better, he said. It's on me. Let me just pause right there. Because what? This man just got dropped into football's version of a haunted house. Zero protection, zero chemistry, full chaos. And he took full responsibility? That's leadership. That's poise. That's a QB mentality most vets still don't have. But while Shedeur stayed composed, the outrage exploded elsewhere. First came Stephen A. Smith, furious. Loud. Classic Stephen A. You don't treat a young man like this, he barked on air. And for once, everyone nodded. Garrett Bush, another respected analyst, broke it down even more bluntly. This was a setup. Plain and simple. Even Skip Bayless, who's not exactly known for handing out sympathy cards, called it a disgrace. He pointed to a pattern. A troubling one. One that's followed the league for decades. See, this isn't just about Shedeur. This is about who gets grace in the NFL and who gets gaslight. You can't ignore the pattern. Young black quarterbacks, especially ones with confidence, swag, and a non-traditional path, are constantly scrutinized under a different microscope. They're told to wait their turn, mature, develop. Meanwhile, others with worse stats and less upside get handed starting jobs on silver platters. Shedeur's case hit every nerve in that conversation. Because the Browns had the talent. They had a clean slate. They had the chance to foster someone special. And instead, they built a scenario where he couldn't win, then used the loss as proof he wasn't ready. Let's talk about Coach Kevin Stefanski for a minute. A guy who has been praised for his calm demeanor and game planning skills. But when asked whether playing Shedeur with backups affected his performance, he brushed it off. We're developing, he said. Developing what? The trauma response of a man getting blitzed every other play? The ability to scramble because the snap count got botched again? This isn't development. This is destruction dressed in coach speak. And here's where it gets worse. The teammates noticed. According to insiders, there were side eyes. Players wondering aloud why Shedeur wasn't getting fair reps, Why the guy who showed up early, stayed late, and never complained was getting ghosted when it mattered most. You know the culture's off when your own locker room starts asking those questions. And what about the fans? Oh, they weren't quiet. Brown's Twitter lit up like a Christmas tree on fire. Threads dissecting every play. Side-by-side clips showing the contrast in protection between the other QBs and Shedeur. Hashtag #FreeShedeur started popping up on signs outside practice facilities. Some even called for Stefanski's resignation. And let's just say season ticket holders weren't shy about threatening cancellations. Because, at the end of the day, people can smell injustice, even if it's wrapped in a press conference. They saw the effort. They saw the talent. They saw the results. And they saw the sabotage. And through all this, Shedeur kept showing up. To practice. To meetings. To pressers. Still watching film. Still owning his mistakes. Still pushing forward. That's not just professionalism. That's rare. That's elite mindset energy. And ironically, the Browns' treatment of Shedeur may have just increased his value tenfold. Because teams around the league, they're watching. They saw that poise under pressure. They saw a young quarterback who made smart reads even when the house was burning. They saw a guy who took the heat and didn't point fingers. And those teams, they want him. Because in today's NFL, quarterbacks aren't just about arm strength. It's about composure, command, emotional intelligence. And Shedeur Sanders checked every box in the worst possible conditions. So the question now isn't what went wrong. We know what went wrong. The question is, where does he go next? Because you better believe his future isn't tied to Cleveland's dysfunction forever. And when he gets a shot, his real shot, with a team that sees him, respects him, and builds with him, it's over. He's not just going to prove them wrong. He's going to embarrass them. Because the truth is, Shedeur Sanders didn't stumble. He got tripped. And now, the only thing more powerful than the story of how they tried to bury him will be the moment he rises from it. So sound off in the comments. Did you see this coming? Was this an honest mistake by the Browns or something deeper? And where should Shedeur go next to light up the league like we all know he can? Subscribe for more, because this saga, it's only just begun. Let's get brutally honest here. Shedeur Sanders was never supposed to succeed in Cleveland. Not under these conditions. Not in that environment. Not with a coaching staff that treated his upside like an inconvenience instead of an investment. They didn't give him a runway. They gave him a trapdoor. And still, he showed flashes. He read the field, delivered under pressure, and carried himself with more maturity than the people allegedly guiding his development. That's what makes this whole situation even more maddening. Because Shedeur didn't just walk into the NFL with confidence. He walked in with credibility. We're talking about a guy who had every excuse to play the legacy card and coast on his last name. But he didn't. He went to Jackson State, balled out. Followed his dad to Colorado, balled out again. Took hits. Made clutch throws. Put up stats. And all while carrying the weight of expectations that most young QBs would buckle under. But in Cleveland, none of that seemed to matter. It's like the organization looked at him and saw a PR problem instead of a potential franchise cornerstone. And that's not just short-sighted, it's dangerous. Because in this league, if you mishandle a quarterback, especially one with as much cultural momentum as Shedeur Sanders, you don't just lose games. You lose the locker room. You lose the fans. You lose the future. And here's the part that's got fans, and even neutral observers, pulling their hair out. They had him. They had him in the building. Motivated, coachable, and working overtime. A dream scenario for any team that spent years bouncing between quarterback projects and temporary stopgaps. All they had to do was nurture him. Not even crown him. Just give him an honest chance to compete. Instead, they fed him to the wolves. Let's talk football logic for a second. If you're truly evaluating a quarterback's readiness, you don't do it with a scout team O-line that couldn't hold a block if their lives depended on it. You don't do it with receivers who don't know the playbook. You don't do it when the offensive scheme is so vanilla it belongs in a middle school playbook. What do you learn from that? What do you really learn? You learn how a player reacts to chaos. Sure, but you don't learn what they're capable of. You don't learn how they operate with a well-oiled unit. You don't learn whether they can elevate a good team to greatness. You learn nothing except how to justify a benching you probably already planned. And maybe that's what stings the most. Because this wasn't just poor planning. It felt intentional. And not just to Shedeur, but to the thousands of fans who saw the raw footage, the body language on the sideline, the complete lack of urgency from the coaching staff. It was as if the outcome had already been decided before the game even kicked off. Now let's take a step back. Let's look at the pattern. How many times have we seen this exact scenario play out in the NFL? A young black quarterback gets drafted or signed with a lot of buzz, comes in with talent, with charisma, with promise. And instead of being embraced and developed, they're placed under a microscope, critiqued for things that other QBs get a pass on. Body language, tone of voice, confidence that gets spun as arrogance. And then, after one bad series or two bad quarters, he's not ready, still needs time, not the right fit. But if that same quarterback gets in the right system, with the right coaching, suddenly he's the next big thing. Sound familiar? It should, because we've watched this movie a dozen times. And every time, the question lingers. Why does it keep happening? Why are the goalposts always moving for players like Shedeur? Why is it that after all the off-season praise, the viral training clips, the leadership moments, and the commitment to improvement, one rough outing with a JV support squad is enough to write him off? Meanwhile, other QBs can throw 3 interceptions and a half and still get praised for fighting through adversity. Make it make sense. Now, let's shift to the emotional side for a second. Because it's easy to get caught up in stats and tape and pressers. But at the end of the day, this is a young man who gave everything to this game, who trusted the process, who bought into the system, who showed up, eyes forward, ready to earn everything. And what did he get in return? Disrespect, delay, dismissal. And yet, he never lashed out. That's what people keep coming back to. That's what turns this from a controversy into a movement. Because Shedeur Sanders has carried himself with nothing but professionalism. He didn't call out teammates. He didn't throw the coaching staff under the bus. He kept it classy, even when he had every right to explode. That's the kind of maturity you build a franchise around. And let's be real here, players around the league see that. Coaches see that. GMs see that. They're watching this unfold and taking notes. Because any front office with a functioning brain is now asking the same question. If Cleveland doesn't want him, can we get him? And that's where this story flips. Because now the spotlight isn't just on Shedeur's preseason. It's on his next step. Where does he go from here? Does he get traded to a team with vision? A franchise that knows how to develop young talent instead of grinding it into dust? Does he land in a system built around his strengths? Mobility, decision-making, leadership? Because if he does, watch out. Because this isn't just a redemption arc waiting to happen. This is a revenge tour. A slow burn, receipts-keeping, highlight reel-fueled comeback story that the league won't be able to ignore. The first touchdown pass he throws in a different jersey, that clip's going viral. The first time he leads a game-winning drive and calmly walks off the field like he's been doing it his whole life, that moment's going to live in NFL history. Because fans love an underdog. But they live for the moment an underdog proves everyone wrong. And Shedeur? He's been quiet for a reason. Because the best revenge in this league is success. Not petty press conferences. Not subtweets. Wins. And he knows it. So now, all eyes are on the Browns. Not because they're contenders. Not because of their Super Bowl chances. But because everyone's watching to see if they realize what they've done. If they realize they had gold in their hands and treated it like scrap. But hey, maybe that's just Cleveland being Cleveland. As for Shedeur, he's not stumbling anymore. He's striding. Away from dysfunction. Toward destiny. So the next time you see his name trending, don't be surprised. Just remember where it started. Remember how they tried to box him in. And remember how he broke out, calm, collected, unbothered. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't just playing for a team anymore. He's playing for every young athlete who was ever told to wait their turn, stay quiet, be grateful for crumbs. And he's about to turn their silence into a roar. And here's the twist that nobody saw coming. This whole debacle, this intentional sidelining, this NFL-style ghosting of Shedeur Sanders, it might have just made him more powerful. Yeah, stay with me. Because let's be honest, in the old NFL, this kind of thing would have buried a young quarterback. The coach says he's not ready, benches him behind the veteran or the safe option, and the story ends there. Fans forget. The player fades. Maybe he gets a clipboard gig for a few years. Maybe he quietly exits stage left and winds up on a practice squad. But this isn't the old NFL. This is now, where the spotlight is everywhere, and silence is a choice, not a sentence. And Shedeur Sanders? He didn't fade. He flipped the script. The Browns may have hoped this would go away quietly. But instead, what they ignited was a movement. The sports world is not just reacting. They're rallying. People are saying it out loud now. Why are we still letting this happen? Why are young quarterbacks of color continually forced to overperform just to be considered adequate? Why is raw talent discounted in favor of system familiarity or veteran experience when those veterans are averaging 13 points a game? It's not just fans and analysts anymore. Players are talking. Behind the scenes, in group chats, in sideline whispers, guys around the league are watching this unfold, and many of them are saying the same thing. If it can happen to him, it can happen to any of us. That's not paranoia. That's history. And Shedeur? He's now more than a quarterback. He's a symbol of what happens when a player knows his worth and refuses to be gaslit by the "will play you eventually" narrative. A symbol of what it looks like to take control of your own storyline, even when the playbook says you're supposed to stay quiet, be patient, and hope for the best. Let me tell you what this means for Cleveland. They're officially the villain now. And not the fun, mustache-twirling, cartoon villain. The clueless, dysfunctional, self-sabotaging type. The kind that turns gold into gravel, and then wonders why no one wants to come play for them. And no amount of post-game excuses or coach speak will fix that perception. Not when the receipts are this public. Not when the clips are already being edited into YouTube documentaries with titles like "How the Browns Failed Shedeur Sanders." Because make no mistake, there will be documentaries. There will be think pieces. There will be highlight reels that overlay Shedeur's preseason completions with dramatic music and slow-motion camera cuts. There will be Twitter threads that break down the tape, frame by frame, showing how even in a broken system, he kept his composure. And when that trade finally happens, the rebranding begins. He'll walk into his new facility, fresh gear, fresh scheme, fresh opportunity, and the cameras will follow every step. Not because it's spectacle, but because people care. They want to see the bounce back. They want to see the redemption arc. They want to see a young star rise in spite of the dysfunction that tried to contain him. And Cleveland? They'll still be stuck trying to explain why they let another quarterback slip through their fingers. But let's focus on Shedeur again, because that's who this is really about. This isn't just a football player. This is a new breed of athlete. One who grew up watching how the league treats outspoken talent and decided he won't be the next cautionary tale. He's not just playing the game. He's mastering the media around it. Look at how he's handled every step of this mess. No tantrums. No finger-pointing. No viral meltdown on social media. Just quiet, surgical moves. Let the analysts fight the battles. Let the tape speak for itself. Let the public tell the story while he keeps preparing. And if that doesn't scream quarterback energy, I don't know what does. You can't coach that. You can't fake that. That kind of awareness? That's generational. So now it's only a matter of time. A matter of time before one of these franchises pulls the trigger and says, "We'll take him." Maybe it's a team that just needs a spark. Maybe it's a franchise that's tired of playing it safe. Maybe it's a front office that sees Shedeur as not just a player, but a platform. Because let's be honest, signing Shedeur isn't just about wins and losses anymore. It's about identity. It's about showing your fans you're ready to evolve, that you recognize talent and you're willing to back it. And whichever team gets him, oh, they're getting more than a QB. They're getting a media presence, a culture shift, a walking rebuttal to the idea that players should stay in line and wait their turn. And that first press conference? Just imagine it. Shedeur steps up to the podium. Fresh jersey, clean fade, calm, confident energy. They ask him, "What do you want to say to the people who doubted you?" And he just smiles and says, "Watch." Boom. Soundbite. It's over. And from there, the sky's the limit. He balls out. He leads comeback drives. He commands huddles like a veteran. And every time he throws a touchdown somewhere in Cleveland, a front office executive winces and whispers, "We had him." Too late. Because this story, it's not a warning anymore. It's a blueprint. A blueprint for every young athlete who's ever been boxed in, overlooked, or benched for reasons that don't show up on the stat sheet. A blueprint for speaking up without losing control. For walking away from chaos without burning down the building. For betting on yourself and winning.